Let's get right into it. Number 10. Mother Teresa's Terrible Truths. Mother Teresa, known for helping the poor and sick in India, wasn't exactly running a five-star hospital. Her hospices were described as houses of horror. Sick and dying people would go hoping for help, only to find volunteers with zero medical training. They reused needles until they were blunt, jabbing patients until they couldn't pierce skin anymore. Basic hygiene rules weren't being followed. Pain management wasn't really her thing. Mother Teresa believed suffering brought people closer to Jesus. So instead of proper pain medication, patients experienced what she called beautiful suffering. Her organization collected millions in donations, but instead of using that money for proper hospitals or basic medical supplies, most of it disappeared into bank accounts. A famous Indian athlete visiting one of her hospices found conditions so horrible, he ended up vomiting outside. The place literally smelled like rotting flesh. Meanwhile, Mother Teresa traveled first class around the world and got the best medical care money could buy when she got sick. Number 9. Gandhi. Gandhi is known as the peaceful resistance guy, the champion of nonviolence, but young Gandhi had dark views history teachers often skip. In the 1890s, 23-year-old Gandhi arrived in South Africa as a lawyer. Instead of fighting racism, he supported it. He wrote terrible things about black Africans. He called them savages and raw in his writings. While fighting for Indian rights, he actively worked to keep Indians separated from black Africans. He argued Indians were superior and should be treated more like white people. When Indians were forced to use the same entrances as black Africans, Gandhi didn't fight for equality. Instead, he demanded separate entrances for Indians. He wasn't just passively racist for the time. He actively wrote and argued for racial segregation. This lasted for years during his time in South Africa. He did change his views later in life, becoming the Gandhi known for peace. But the man famous for fighting oppression started out supporting it. Number 8. Churchill's shadowy policies. While Churchill was giving inspiring speeches in London, he was also making dark decisions that led to millions of deaths in India. Consider the Bengal famine of 1943. This wasn't because the crops failed. Scientists have proven there was plenty of rain that year, even above average. This was because Churchill's government kept exporting rice from Bengal, even when people were literally dropping dead in the streets. They implemented the rice denial policy. British soldiers destroyed massive amounts of rice to keep it from potentially falling into Japanese hands. Imagine watching soldiers dump your food into the water while your family is starving. When local officials begged Churchill for help, he blamed Indians for breeding like rabbits. This was a man-made catastrophe that killed up to 3 million people. That's like wiping out the entire population of Chicago, all because Churchill decided feeding British soldiers was more important than keeping Bengali civilians alive. Number 7. Edison. Thomas Edison wasn't the lone genius we learned about in school. He ran his workshop like a sweatshop for brains. He had dozens of inventors working for him, all competing against each other, and when someone came up with a brilliant idea, Edison would slap his name on it. His name ended up on all the patents, not theirs. Edison would watch other inventors fail, then swoop in, make tiny improvements to their ideas, and claim the whole thing as his own invention. His whole tireless inventor image was basically just really good PR. He was less of a genius inventor, and more of a genius at taking credit for other people's work. Number 6. Jefferson's jumbo hypocrisy. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "All men are created equal," while signing slave purchase receipts. He owned over 600 slaves during his lifetime. At his mansion, Monticello, slaves did everything from cooking his meals to building his house. Sally Hemings was one of Jefferson's slaves who bore several of his children. The man who wrote about freedom and equality literally enslaved his own kids. His children were born into bondage because their dad decided keeping them as property was more convenient. While Jefferson wrote about liberty and equality, his own children lived as property. He talked about education being essential for democracy, while making it illegal to teach slaves to read. He actually acknowledged that slavery was wrong, then just kept doing it anyway. He kept this up until the day he died. So next time someone quotes Jefferson about equality, remember this was a guy who couldn't even treat his own children as human beings. Number 5. Sims' surgical sins. J. Marion Sims is called the father of modern gynecology, but his story is dark. Back in the 1840s, he experimented on enslaved women without anesthesia. Women named Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy, who couldn't refuse because they were considered property. Sims performed the same painful surgery over and over on these women. Anarcha endured 30 operations without any pain relief. These weren't quick procedures. Some lasted for hours. He performed these experiments even though anesthesia was already being used for white patients. Sims thought black women couldn't feel pain like white people. He convinced slave owners to let him experiment by offering to do it for free. These women were kept in a small hospital behind his house, waiting for the next operation without painkillers. When he finally perfected his technique through this torture, he started using anesthesia, but only for his white patients. Today, some of his statues have been taken down because people realized he built his career on torture. Number 4. Columbus, the governor of grief. When Columbus landed in the Caribbean, he brought smallpox, measles, and influenza. These diseases spread rapidly. Up to 90% of the local population died in some areas. That's like 9 out of 10 people in a room dying. On his very first day in the New World, he started grabbing natives to use as servants. He wrote in his journal that these gentle people would make excellent slaves. Once he became governor, he turned the islands into his personal nightmare factory. He forced people to work in gold mines until they dropped dead. If natives didn't bring him enough gold, his men would cut off their hands. Then he forced them wear their severed hands around their necks as a warning. He had dismembered bodies paraded through the streets to keep people in line. When natives tried to fight back, he had them hunted down with war dogs. He shipped thousands of natives to Spain as slaves. Many didn't survive the journey. The ships were basically floating coffins. Columbus was so brutal that even the Spanish crown arrested him for his cruelty. Number 3. Leopold II's savage stewardship. King Leopold II of Belgium convinced everyone he was bringing civilization to the Congo. He even set up the International African Association to make himself look good. But he turned an area 76 times bigger than Belgium into his personal piggy bank. He wanted rubber, fast. So he gave his soldiers orders. If villages didn't meet their rubber quotas, they'd get wiped off the map. His soldiers would force villages to collect rubber from the jungle. If they didn't bring enough, his men would cut off their hands, not just the hands of the workers, but women, children, anyone they could catch. His soldiers had to prove they weren't wasting bullets on hunting. For every bullet they used, they had to bring back a human hand. Sometimes they'd cut off hands from living people just to save bullets. They'd even make people bring them baskets of hands to prove they were punishing people. Millions of people died under his rule. Maybe up to 10 million. That's like wiping out half the population of Belgium at the time. The crazy part is, while all this was happening, Leopold was in his palace in Belgium. He never even set foot in the Congo. When journalists finally exposed what was happening, he burned all the evidence. Belgium eventually had to buy the Congo from him. Number 2. Walt Disney. The man behind Mickey Mouse and Magical Kingdoms had a darker side. In 1941, Disney's animators went on strike because they were overworked and underpaid. Walt took it personally. He publicly called the strike leaders communist agitators. He testified before Congress that the strike was part of a communist plot. He created the happiest place on earth while making his own workers miserable. Walt also didn't hire female animators for creative roles. Women applying for animation jobs got letters stating they could only trace other people's work. Many classic Disney films are filled with racial stereotypes so harsh they are difficult to watch now. Disney now puts warning labels on them. He built an empire on making children happy, while making the people who created that happiness miserable. Number 1. Andrew Jackson. The guy on your $20 bill came from nothing and became president. He was called a man of the people, specifically meaning white settlers who wanted free land. Native American tribes were living on their ancestral territories. Jackson looked at that land and decided to kick everyone out, so he passed the Indian Removal Act of 1830. Soldiers showed up at Native American homes, gave them minutes to grab what they could carry, then forced them to walk hundreds of miles through snow and rain. This forced removal of nearly 50,000 Native Americans led to the Trail of Tears. Thousands died from cold, disease, and starvation. Jackson ignored the Supreme Court when they ruled the removal illegal. He justified all this suffering by saying it was for national prosperity, and his face is on money now. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.